everyone, and thank you for watching Principal Living today. Today, I have a special guest, and we have Daniel Gomez in the house. To give you a little bit more of an intro, we'll let you guys know a little bit about himself. But first, I want to introduce you to him and for him to let us know more information about his business, about where he's coming from. So first of all, thank you, Daniel, for being here. We really appreciate you.
Hey, Warner, thank you so much for having me on your show. I've been looking forward to it the whole day, man, and I'm excited to add value. And just Daniel Gomez Inspires is just a guy who loves people. I had a corporate training today, and I believe no matter how high up you go in the scale, there's always something you don't know. I remember one of my great mentors said, "You don't know what you don't know, Daniel." And it's never been truer today because the world is changing so fast. And the moment you think you know everything is the moment you start dying, right? If you're not progressing, you're regressing. So that's just who I am. I love people and I love adding value. So I'm here to add value to your audience, Warner.
Well, appreciate you once again. We thank you for being here. Your presence today is really valuable to us. So thank you. Just based on what you said, I really like that you're coming from a place of faith. That you're very big when it comes to that. So I think you have a great personality, a great soul to inspire people, and you have a lot of value to give. So we're really excited to hear some of your wisdom today. So once again, thank you. So if you can let us know a little bit about your background, what you do, and where you come from, so the audience will know a little bit more about yourself.
Well, my background is I ran multi-million-dollar organizations for many years. And you think because you reach success, you reach prominence, a title, you got money in the bank, your house is paid off, you have the Corvette, you have the Rolexes and all these other toys, Harleys over and over and over again. You think you got it figured out and you don't. Then one day cancer comes knocking on your wife's door and well, you got to honor your wife like the word of God says. And man, you think you know it, but you don't. And I think just running these organizations and having 100 employees and you realize how much you pour into your organization that you work for. And sometimes you forget to pour that extra into your wife, into your children. And I think I learned a valuable lesson over 5 years ago is just to really reprioritize my life. So as a leader of my home, right, I'm leading everybody else, but I had to lead my own home even more. So I made a decision to step back and really just take care of my wife when she had a double mastectomy. And I'll tell you, when I did that, I didn't really know what I was going to do, but God put it in my heart to come out and be a motivational speaker. And that was just kind of the advice he gave me, go do this. And that was pretty much it. But most of us, we don't realize how much wisdom we have inside of us, Warner. We don't realize how much value we have inside of us until we take a step back. And I really reflected and went deep. I mean, I went deep. I've cried so much more as a grown man these past 4 years than I have my whole life. But it helped me realize and see clearer what was inside Daniel Gomez Inspires. And I'll tell you, when I really forgave myself when the lid came off, I was like, man, I know more about business than I realized. So I said, why not go into full, right? I'm over here making everybody millions of dollars. It's time to make millions for myself. And that's a decision I made. And God's met me at my level of faith. And that's where I'm at. So I try to bring business savvy because one thing I realize is most small businesses, even small enterprises, and even to some mid-size, they don't have the right sales process in place. They don't have the right just structures in place. And they don't think like really business people. They go through the process, but they really still think they're business owners or young entrepreneurs stuck in business, but they really have the mindset of a 9-to-5 employee. And that's where I come in and I help you fill the gap.
That is freaking awesome, man. That's awesome. So I do believe that, though. I do believe that there's a lot of times, just coming from a background of sales, that a lot of business owners, especially in the sales industry and where I come from, I know how important the sales side of a business is, and how important it is for the business because it's pretty much where you're getting your top line, right, of revenue. And sometimes they, like you said, they have this mentality of being in a 9-to-5, that they focus on the things that actually don't matter. Sometimes they are too focused on something that is not beneficial to the business. But what is beneficial to the business, they kind of push away and try to stay away from it. Because I believe what it is more of a lack of knowledge. When people are really not too too familiar with a subject or with a certain area that they don't know about, they really tend to push away from it. So I believe you bring in that knowledge and making these people knowledgeable about how to put systems in place and how to sell more. That is what makes that gap really connecting the bridge with it, right? So that's awesome, brother.
Yeah. Well, something that I realize is, what the problem is many times. And if I was to give you a principle, I don't even know if we would call it a principle, but we'll call it Daniel's principle, God's wisdom, is you need to be delivered from smallness. What do I mean by smallness? Think about this. If you look back and reflect back on your career, reflect back on your life, and you look back, you're like, wow, I solved a lot of problems.
Mhm.
I think we all have. But why is it exactly to the point that you said, we encounter this new problem and it seems it's really a small problem in the whole scheme of things, but we look at it and it seems like a huge problem. And when that happens to us, when it seems like a huge, big problem and it seems to take our focus away, well, you know what the problem is, right? You're just too small for the problem. Think
That is,
about it.
I
You're
love
too
that.
small for the problem. So the solution is, well, get bigger than the problem and the problem's going to get small. But to your point exactly, is we let these so-called big problems, which really are small. So, because when we say that, man, it's a big problem, what you're really saying in a different perspective, you're saying, I'm small. That's what you're saying. It's really what you're saying.
Mhm. That's correct.
You're saying, I'm small. You're saying, I can't handle it. I'm focusing. This problem's taking on my focus. It's taking off, right? Because we know what we focus on expands. So the more you
Mhm.
focus on the problem, the more the problem's going to expand and you're never going to find a solution. So what you really need to be asking yourself is, how can I make myself bigger than this problem?
Mhm.
When the
Awesome.
determination is there to solve the problem, a path's going to appear. Let me say it again. When your determination is there to solve the problem, the path is going to appear, but most people ain't determined enough and they bow down to this problem because of their own insecurities or their own frustration or the fact that their own ego and pride gets in the way when all that we need is already inside of us. So I want to encourage your audience, when you look at a problem and you say it's a big problem, what you're really saying to yourself is, I'm small.
That is so
Different
true, man.
perspective, right? I mean, just think about it.
That is so true. That is so true. Just to give you a quick example, and this has happened to me personally, that I could go to a conference where there's big speakers, people that have multi-millionaires or multi-billion dollar companies. And I'm thinking, man, these guys have the power. They have the knowledge of maybe the problem that I'm going through right now for them to solve it. And it has happened to me that I come up to them, and before I'm about to actually ask the question, I already answer it to myself. Just like you said, the answer is already within me. The only thing that is holding me back is myself. So that has happened to me a couple of times when I'm like, man, I need to find out what the answer of this is. But before I even open my mouth, I'm like, I already know. Like, why am I gonna bother this man? And I step back a little bit and I just say hi, maybe shake their hand, and that's it. Because that is so true. The answers that you need, they're already within you.
Well, you
So
said
that
something that was key there, and I love what you said. And I want your audience to think about this. What you really said too, and maybe you didn't hear yourself in this, is that you made the investment within yourself to put yourself in rooms where people are wiser, richer, stronger, faster than you. And you were okay with that because you wanted to learn from them.
Mhm.
And so many of us in that smallness, right? When we need to be delivered from smallness within ourselves, we think, oh, I don't need help. I know it all. And when you think you know it all, you don't put yourself in those. So what you really said is, I love myself enough to invest in myself, to put in myself in these bigger rooms where there's smarter people. And it goes back to that old analogy that we all had. When you're the biggest shark in the tank, you got to find a new tank. But we hear that, but do we really apply it in our lives? And this is what happens. Because when you put yourself in these bigger rooms, the frequency is different. You're operating at a millionaire's frequency, at a multi-millionaire's frequency. So the thought waves, the energy is up here as to when you're hanging around with people that complain and gossip and all these other whatever junks, right? Excuses, they justify who they are, they blame others. You're not going to get the answer because you're not in that, the wavelength's not going to come to you because it's above you.
You know, I love it. And there's one of my mentors that told me this. He said, eagles always fly miles higher than any other bird. He said, so most of the eagles are flying by themselves. This is not a bad thing. This is saying that you're stepping away from the crowd and you're actually investing in yourself. You're separating yourself. He's like, so if you are flying and you catch yourself with a bunch of pigeons, you're flying too small.
Yeah.
You're flying too low. So that's exactly what you're saying. And I think it's awesome.
But think about what you said. Think about the altitude that a pigeon flies. If the elevation isn't high enough, you're not going to see the clear path through the mountains to say you're going to turn around. But when you raise yourself to an eagle's elevation of soaring, you're like, oh, I see it. It's right there. It's clearer because your frequency is higher. And that's where the answer is at. And that's what helps people get delivered from smallness and overcome these problems. But it's just so many times. I think I think if I was to give your audience a word of advice is you really need to get rid of your old life. Everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to go out there and be amazing at real estate, be amazing at speaking and have an award-winning podcast, whatever it may be an author. But your new life, Warner, is going to cost you your old life. And so many of us ain't willing to turn your back on your old life. And there comes a point where you have to turn your back on your old life because under stress, under pressure, when that big problem comes, right? When you're operating in smallness, you're going to rubber band back to what you're familiar with. You always run back to what you're familiar with because it's a safety net that we have in our own subconscious thinking. And the only way to overcome that is to put yourself in a different environment. That way you can get right. I would tell your audience, write this down. Get familiar with the unfamiliar. You have to learn how to get familiar with the unfamiliar. I love that quote. And when you start really living it and applying it, you're going to cry. You're going to be frustrated. But once you push through that barrier and you really get out of that comfort zone, man, I'll tell you, that's where you get delivered from smallness and you really start saying like, I was worried about that. I mean, I think you've been there. And a good example, like for us, is what does that look like? Okay. So let me say this. I was telling my wife, we went to a couple of events and made some investments in the business because you have to invest in your business. You have to invest in yourself. I truly believe that. I said, man, honey, you realize we invested XYZ and I don't know, it was over $30,000 or something. It was a good chunk of change. I said, it's all paid off already. And at the moment, we made such a big thing about that $5,000 decision, about that $10,000 decision. And what you're really saying is God's not able to take care of that, right? It's according to your faith, be it done unto you. And I can tell you that God's been faithful when you're a woman and a man of integrity, that God loves when you walk in that righteousness. So a principle that I want your audience to take away is, right, dishonest scales. When you have dishonest scales, when you lie and cheat, I go into so many businesses and I'm like, well, this is all the revenue you have. Well, yeah. And I'm like, it's not making sense, right? Well, we do get this cash and we do get this in check. And I'm like, well, do you report it? Well, no, this goes to my personal name. And well, that's another $1,000. Why don't you report it? Well, because of government. That's hogwash. What you're really saying is you're cheating the government. You're being dishonest in business and you expect God to bless that crap. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. So I challenged this client. I said, I want you to report everything that you have. Everything. She goes, Daniel, but I was like, if not, there's no reason for us to work because you're not going to listen to you want your business to succeed or not. And it's amazing when they started doing the simple principles of just really being a woman and a man of integrity and reporting all your revenue, all your income. Their revenue almost tripled within the first year. And because of being honest, and it clearly states, right, when you're dishonest, they can't bless that. So many people, we want to twist the truth, and you can't twist the truth because you reap what you sow.
That is true. One thing that I have a couple of notes that I wrote down based on what you said. I want to come back to one, and you said something. You said a quote about faith, and one thing that I've learned of how faith actually works. And I'll tell you the difference. What I've seen of how most people think it is, and how I learned that is actually how it works. And most people think that faith is saying, being like a wishful thinker and saying, this is going to happen to me, this is going to happen to me, and go and sit down and don't do nothing. But I believe that what I've learned is faith actually gets activated at the moment you're actually taking a step. If you don't take a step, there's nothing for God to actually come and fulfill, because you're not doing anything. So there has to be action taken by you first before there's something to be fulfilled. So I really like that you said, I'm gonna put this much money into myself, into my company, because I believe it. The rest is up to him. And now it's been taken care of. It's that simple. It's that simple. But that gap in between of saying, man, what's gonna happen? What if it doesn't work? And actually doing it is what faith actually is about. Taking that step, taking that leap without you figuring it out, because that's not your job. It's just you going and actually applying faith.
Think about this. You think about the environment that we're in.
Mm-hmm.
You put yourself in an environment where the frequency of thinking was higher.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody wants to play in the NFL. Everybody wants to play in the NFL, but they don't want to graduate from high school. They want to hang around in the gossip. They want to hang around in the complaining. And some of them go to college, right? And they complain a little bit less, but at the end of this day, they still blame others. They still play the victim. And then they wonder why they don't get to that NFL level. And it's because they stay stuck at the level of the environment that they're comfortable with.
Mm-hmm.
And when you never invest in yourself and you don't turn back on those high school years, you don't turn back on those high school days, you don't turn back on that college game, you're never going to reach the NFL. You're never going to do it. But you get so comfortable in that familiarity that it costs you the very destiny that God wants to give you. And then we want to blame God. We want to blame our husband. We want to blame our ex-wife. We want to blame everybody except yourself. And the one thing that millionaires do is millionaires take responsibility for themselves.
Mm-hmm.
They take responsibility for the results. And are the results always great? No, I can tell you that sometimes the results, they stink. But I can tell you that you learn from it and you grow, but you have to turn your back on your old life. And I think this is what you're trying to say is the bottom line is you have to bet on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You have to bet on yourself. I heard one of my mentors say this. I bought that jet, Daniel, because I was betting on my future self. I had enough belief in myself that when I took that action step, that at the end of the day, when that payment came for that jet, I was going to have the money. And guess what, Daniel? I had that and then some. But I had to take that step. So most people ain't willing to bet on their future self. And I think if you want to take a principle away from this is you have to be able to bet on your future self, because if you're not willing to bet on your future self, how do you expect other people to, people can sense that, they can see that in you. And it's never easy. But the thing is this, is that the more you stretch yourself, a stretched mind and a stretched spirit is never going to retract back to its original size.
I like that. I like that. So the more stretching, the more you put yourself in different environments and you grow yourself, the better you will become.
Yeah, it's a must. It's you have to. We expect, and I love what you said, because we expect the higher power, God, to do everything, and it doesn't work that way. I have a saying and I use this even when somebody asks me, they're like, "Well, Daniel, how did you get where you're at?" Because I'll go in, like today, right? I was at a corporate training and we're there, and I don't talk about God because I respect the corporate. I respect it, but if somebody asks me, well, then hey, you asked me a question, so I'm going to answer it. And they're like, man, there's something different about you. Like, how do you do that? It's like, oh, you really want to know? Like, yeah. I'm like, well, because God blesses a moving target. God blesses the moving target. And the more you move and the more you honor him, the more he's going to bless you and the more opportunities going to go there. But you got to walk in that authority of what he's given us. And most people, they don't have the confidence and the ability in themselves to bet on themselves. So in return, they just rather complain, and they stay stuck there, and they gossip about, oh, Warner got lucky. He just got this other real estate deal. And it's like, he didn't get lucky. He put out there and get it. But people, right? People's own insecurities, when that happens, I did a post on this the other day, is that it's when somebody is insecure, to protect themselves, their own ego flares up, and then they start putting judgment on your life because the fact that they don't feel sufficient enough to be where you want to be, because they don't see it and believe it for themselves, so they'd rather judge you. But it's their way of their ego protecting them.
I believe what happens there is that they're actually judging themselves without really telling themselves. They have to project it. They have to take it out on something. So they are talking to themselves, but it's directed towards you, right?
Yes.
To take one thing that you said that is very important, that I've learned that every successful person that I've been around always does, and it's take the responsibility. Just like you said, they don't want the responsibility. He got lucky, but he's judging himself by pushing it towards you and not taking responsibility himself. So I I really like
Yeah.
that
And what
kind
they're
of
really
revolt.
saying, is, man, why can't I be as fortunate as Warner? Why can't I be as blessed as Daniel? It's like, because people just don't want to do the work, and they'd rather take the coward. I call it a coward's way. I mean, and I think I've earned that right to say it, because to me it's the coward's way out. Because I started my journey when my wife had stage 3 breast cancer, double mastectomy. That's when I started my business. So when anybody makes an excuse, I'm like, it's just a freaking excuse. Well, yeah, it's easy for you to say. Look at, you didn't see where I started.
That is true. That is so true. Um, they say I've heard this before. They say it takes 10 years to become an overnight success, right? And I believe, and I truly believe that. And I see it in people that are like in sports, let's say like Michael Jordan, where we see his success, but we never think about, okay, this guy took from he was a little kid to all the way down to high school, college, to actually develop habits, to put himself through discipline and putting the work into it to become the person he is today. Again, we say he was lucky. He was
Yes.
in the lucky seat. He was a person that had probably rich parents, always blaming on something else. And I think that part of taking the responsibility to really saying to yourself, this is where I'm at. Maybe I messed up or not, but this is where I want to go, and this is going to be my shot. This is what I need to do. Then that is when true change actually happens. When you take the full responsibility of what your situation and your future.
Yeah. You have to. I think that's rule number one, right? To really, right? I have my new book coming out, and it's called The Makings of a Millionaire Mind. And something that I talked about just in the work that I've done, and the millionaires that I've been around with, is that you take responsibility. You take responsibility for yourself. And so many people, they're interested in being a millionaire. They're interested in being successful. But when you're interested, it doesn't work. You have to be committed. And in my book, it'll be released here the last week of March, the first quarter of 2022. So go get your copy. But what I talk about there is that you need to develop that millionaire mind. And when you develop that millionaire mind, think about this. And you made a good point. Every business needs revenue. And the ones that had that millionaire mindset, there's the ones that made it through 2020. They're the ones that made it through 2021. Because there was a hangover in business from 2020 to 2021. And then the ones that went out of business, they just didn't make it. So many speakers didn't make it. So many coaches
Mhm.
went back to 9 to 5 because they didn't have what it took. And they didn't want to do the work it needed to work. I mean, think about it. I think about you, how you move from one state to the next to really just help yourself and advance yourself. Most people, they're not that committed. So I would
Mhm.
ask your audience, are you interested, or are you committed to what you want to become? And if you want to become that multimillionaire, successful real estate investor, that number one author, whatever it is for you, being interested ain't going to get you there. I can tell you that.
You will never succeed passively. That's pretty much
Yeah.
to summarize it. So we've had quite a quite a quite a vast um, conversation already, and it's all valuable, and it's awesome. I really love it. But did you just to make sure, do you throw in one of the principles there, or do you want to start to for from number one? What is your number one principle you think you've applied in your life that has made a change that you've never compromised on, and it has gotten you to the point that you are today?
Oh, that's easy. It's you reap what you sow. You reap
Okay.
what you sow. And I believe in every dollar that I make, I always give God the first dime, no matter what. I
Okay.
always give it God the first dime. I believe that that's a success principle when in finances. If you're given a seed and you're not sowing seed, or you think about a farmer. If a farmer has all these corn seeds and he eats them all, is there going to be any more seeds to sow? No, he runs out of corn. You
Hmm.
agree?
Yeah.
So why is it in money when we have money, we spend all our money, then we wonder, well, where's the money? Well, you didn't sow any financial seeds. So
Hmm.
I think one success principle that you need is you need to be sowing money seeds. You got to sow in those money seeds. And I know the Bible talks about 30, 60, and 90, and I believe in some even 100, but I don't even look at the 30, 60. I look at the 100-fold. He says some will receive the 100-fold, and I believe that that's me. And when you sow it, and you have to grow in it. I'm not going to sit here and lie that oh, it's always easy. No, because it's easy to give 100. It's easy to give 1,000. But then when you start going to right where God says, okay, we'll give hundreds of thousands, it's like, oh crap, it challenges you a lot more. I'm just being honest with you.
Yeah.
But it's that principle of sowing and reaping, that law, and I can truly say that our success has come by honoring God with our first seeds and sowing those. And that's what really has gotten us to where we've been at. Because even when my wife was having her surgeries, that she had 8 major surgeries from breast cancer, we never stopped giving and tithing to God. And I truly believe that He honors those seeds. And we haven't even seen them, to be honest with you. You said 10, and I'm thinking right now when you said that, I said, man, it's on, like really in reality, we're barely entering into our fifth year of business, our first fifth year of business. I said, wow, what is 10 going to look like? That's what you made me think. I'm like, darn God, my jet's around the corner.
There you go. And I really hope that for you. I really do, man. Um, but I do think that it takes a while. I mean, for something just like you said, like you were putting this perspective of a farmer. If you plant the seed, there there's seasons that are gonna come into play. It's not gonna be summer all year for you to come and reap and just go, right? There's gonna be different seasons that are gonna hit you. But throughout those seasons they're gonna teach you something to prepare you to when it's time for reaping. So I really like the perspective that you give. Um, is is there something that really got you to to um, to really apply this principle? Like, how did you came about it, and what made you realize it, and what made you apply it? So I just want to get more information about how
Well,
you came about it.
I was 26 years old. My dad was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, and they gave him a month to live.
Mhm.
And I remember crying outside University Hospital in here in San Antonio. And I just said, God, I don't know who you are. I believe that there's some God out there, but I don't know you. I said, if you help me, I'll serve you the rest of my life. I went home that day and got totally drunk because it was
Mhm.
just like right. And my dad, like, man, I had lost my mom when I was 10. So it was just, God, if you're real, help me. And I just woke up the next day and my wife thought I was crazy. She really thought I lost it. Like something, I wasn't even hungover. I was just, it's like this, the spirit of Christ just woke up in me. And it wasn't, I just knew being around my sister, because my sister had been a believer, that I told my wife, if we're going to stay married, if this marriage is going to work, we need to go to church and we need to give 10%, because I would see my sister do it. And it was like automatic, and never, and like by God's grace as my witness, we've never intentionally missed a seed. We might go on vacation and we just, oh crap, we forgot to give, and I mean, when we get back home, we'll do it. But it's like for the last 22 years, I'm 48 years old. For the last 22 years, we've never stopped giving, and that's the thing, right? Because I'll be honest with you, I'm gonna be totally transparent. There was a season, like these principles work. I mean, it worked, because there was a time when my heart wasn't as close to God as it was now. 10 years ago, my heart, I didn't see it, but my heart wasn't where it is today. But I know the principles. I knew that if I sowed a seed, I was going to get a harvest. I knew if I sowed $1, I was going to get 100 back. I knew that. So no matter what, even though when I wasn't doing everything I was supposed to do, I knew the principle that God doesn't go against his own principles. It's a
Mhm.
law of the universe. You reap what you sow. But then again, on the other side, I wasn't sowing so good seeds over here. And God said, hey, it's time, right? I've been knocking at your door. You're ignoring me. You got the finances down, but now it's like, it's time to get your full attention over here. And my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer. And not that God did it, but it just, things arise, right? Things arise that bring us back closer to God. And a principle, a law is a law. A principle is a principle, right? It doesn't matter if it's a, right? Right now, I have a
Mhm.
highlighter and I have which one's gonna, they're both gonna fall. It doesn't matter, because a law of gravity. It's a law. You reap
Mhm.
what you sow.
That is so true. That is so true, man. Um, I'm gonna say something to you based on something you repeated, like you repeated a couple of times, that I believe, then, and I think it will be beneficial to you if you let me speak to you in this behalf. Um, and when you say when that that your wife has gone through this cancer, I believe that sometimes we put into situations that are going to be beneficial in the future, but we cannot see it at the moment. That they're so, they could be so bad, or in a way maybe even traumatic, the point that we don't see it. We don't see the benefit of it. But one thing that really caught something that you were saying that made me realize this is that you said that now you are better at speaking. Now you are better at delivering a message. You are now better at connecting, let's say, with people. And I believe that the stuff that you've gone through is is part of the process. Sometimes we don't see it, right? But I do believe that the experience that you went through has helped you in hindsight to
Yes.
really be able to connect and to be able to deliver a good message to a person that is in a bad spot right now, and you want to get them to a better spot because you've been there. Like I've told my wife this. Like sometimes we see people or kids sometimes that we're not able to influence because their parents are, let's say, in front of us, or they're part of our family, and these kids are not getting a good a, a good mindset, or maybe they're going through something very rough. But I tell her, sometimes is not our judgment. Sometimes it's not our assignment to go into this person's life and fix it. Sometimes God takes them through something for them to do something with what happened. And what I mean with that is sometimes you can have a traumatic experience, but that same traumatic experience can help you to develop a program or something to help somebody to not go through the same thing, right? Because
Yes.
you go through it. You have the experience. Now you're able to help somebody else. So I really love that the way you've turned, even though it was a tragedy that happened to your wife, to something that is actually beneficial, something that became something great for both of you guys. And I truly believe that's sometimes what happens. We have to go through the bad to become great at what we do.
And since you put it that way, if you think about just the underlying story of what we started talking about, it's going back to what I said. And you're right, right? Are you going to be bigger than the problem? of cancer, or you're going to allow the problem of cancer to be bigger than you. And I think so many people, when it comes to these situations, I was surprised because we went to this conference and we were there with Mel Robbins, and one of the ladies won this award, and she was crying. It was a doctor. And she was like, well, I want to give this award to my husband. And I was like, that's kind of corny, right? At first, right? Just my first instinct. But then I listened to what she said. She goes, I want to thank my husband for sticking through me through my breast cancer journey. And at the time, I didn't, my wife had just kind of started her journey, but I didn't realize that like there's a large percentage of husbands that leave their wives when this happens, a large percentage. And I was like, wow, I never realized that. And I say that because I think I was always committed, but it just made me realize that we're going to make it through this, and we're going to trust God on the other side. And we grew. It forces you to grow because you become bigger than that problem. And the next thing you know, everything else is like, it makes all other problems that seem humongous. It's like, that's what I'm worried. Like, that's dumb. It's kind of like my wife made a joke because when we moved into our house that we're in now, she's like, oh, poor Daniel, his pool's not working. But it put things in perspective. You know, sometimes we make the smallest, dumbest thing a big problem, and you're like, you know what, you're absolutely right. And I think when you can laugh at yourself and joke about things and have fun with it, you're like, at the grand scheme of things, is it gonna right? Is it it's what I'm good? Is this problem that I'm at? Is it really? Is it gonna be a problem in 60 days? And if the question is no, well, then just let it go.
You know, you brought up one point, and I just maybe we'll move to the second principle, but I just wanna hone in on what something you said. And there are times, we talked about this earlier, that there are seasons for everything, right? Like it's the same principle that you're talking about. You have to reap what you sow. So there are seasons for everything that happens in life. But some people make a decision for one season to be permanent instead of actually making a small temporary decision for what is going on in the problem. Because it doesn't mean that something came to stay, it came to pass, right?
Yes.
So it could be that sometimes you make a quick decision based on emotion, based on what you're doing or what's going on in your life, that is permanent, that is for a long time, and that drags you actually down, and you stay stuck instead
Yes.
of saying, this is where I'm at, this is the problem right now, but it will come to pass. It will be just seasonal, it will be for a little bit. That's that. I think that's where the difference lies, and that's what actually, based on what you're telling me, that's what happened to you guys. You
Yeah.
stick you were able to stick next to your wife and say, you know what, let's go through it, right? Like, I'm not making a permanent decision on something that is temporarily. So I think that's awesome, man.
Well, that's actually the second principle if you think about it. It's honor your spouse.
Okay.
So many of us, we don't honor our spouse, we don't honor our husband, we don't honor our wife, and we've heard it, whatever it may be. I mean, I remember when I was running these organizations, and you go to the break room and you hear the wives talk about their husbands, or he's not good in bed, or he's over here doing this, or the guys have the guy talk and say, ah, well, she ain't worth the shit, or she never cooks dinner. It's like, I'm like, bro, like if that's the way you talk about your wife and you expect your life to be blessed, it's not gonna happen. It's like it's not gonna work that way. Like you're what you're doing is you're cursing your marriage. In return, you're cursing your own life. And then you wonder why you are broke at the end of the month, or your wife goes on these shopping sprees, or on vice versa. We wonder why, if as a woman, if you're calling your husband an asshole all the time in front of your friends and disrespecting him at a barbecue. Like, there was this couple that we would, you don't realize it, but looking back, you're like, man, they treated each other bad. We'd go to these Dallas Cowboy football games, and I'd be like, they would literally like talk down to each other. And it's just, and you expect it to be blessed. Like, no, like, a huge principle is honor your spouse. You have to honor your spouse. And I would even say with that, I would piggyback on that, is you got to honor your family, honor your children. I think so many times we need to honor our right. It's God. than your wife and your family. And you got to honor your family. You got to honor your kids because they're looking at us. We wonder why they're rebellious. Well, if you don't honor them and listen to them and just let them know that they're human beings too, that you love them, I mean, how do you expect them to respect you?
Well, I believe that both of the principles are very well aligned, right? Because the same thing that you were saying, if you have to first honor, you have to sow the seed, right?
Yes.
Otherwise, you cannot expect for me to be calling you, whether it's a wife or husband, to be calling you an asshole every 10 minutes, and for me to get something back completely different, right? There's no reciprocity to go, like, at least it wouldn't be a fair reciprocity, right? So you have to sow the seed. You have to be able to honor your spouse, which I really love. Like, I believe that's a great thing to do. One thing that I want to point out is, um, when, like you were saying, your story, you will go into the break room and you're hearing all these people and talking crap about the other person, about their spouse. But if you're saying this guy is an asshole, or this lady is a whatever, right? What does that statement make you? You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
you're just
if
you're
you,
just you're disrespecting them, and you're really disrespecting yourself because you're the we'll just say you're the dummy married to that person. And
exactly,
it goes back to you. It was so you're what you're really saying is you had a bad choice of judgment, and your character was not clear that day, so you married the wrong person, is what you're saying. And
exactly.
people don't see that. And I think now that I'm on this side, actually this year will be 25 years that I've been with my wife. We'll be
Awesome.
celebrating 25 years in August. And it's 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 cool because our kids are gone and we just have our dogs, and my grandson comes and hangs out with us sometimes, and it's he's like our, just like having the kids again when they were babies. He's only 2 years old, but it's just really being silly again and falling in love again and just laughing. And that, like my friend, we went, true story, we were I think when COVID happened, we went to this barbecue, and there I'm like, the coach in me comes out, and I'm just like, so what did we learn from COVID? And one of them, well, nothing. And I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty sad. And I didn't say nothing. And then one of the other guys was like, well, yeah, well, then right away they're quick to, what about you, Daniel? Right? Like, I really enjoy just having lunch with Mari and having fun, because for almost 20 years, I never really had lunch with her every day. And I like the fact that we get to break bread and hang out and be silly and talk. And what broke my heart is this other couple, they were like, well, nothing's really changed in our lives. He's upstairs working, she's downstairs watching her novela. And they don't even, what they really say is they didn't really communicate. And it's like, it's just sad when you can spend that much time with somebody underneath the roof, same building, but you still don't really spend time with that person.
You don't enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's many
That-
people that do that. It's so I think it's really just being intentional on honoring each other and honoring your spouse. And I think that that's one reason why we've been as successful too, is really trying to add value to each other and add value to my wife, and she adds value to me, and it just reciprocated, and trying to really encourage each other. So I think that page, because your kids see it. People, I mean, you can take as many pictures as you want and put it on Instagram and on Facebook, but at the end of the day, it's like you see the results because your kids see it, and that they're an extension of who you are.
that is true. That is so true. I I want to pick your brain, since you have now a track record of 25 years in marriage. How do you implement this principle? So how do you honor your spouse? And I'm talking directly towards, like, how do you do it specifically?
Well, it's easy because at the end of the day, we're still men, right? We're still human to me. And I'll, like this morning, like you work out and you get in the zone, and my trainer came over and we're doing our workout, and you're pumped up, and you come in and you're working, you're doing something, and your wife's on something, and you don't hear her because she's two rooms down her office. And I'm like, hey, did you hear me? And it's like, I don't hear you. And I'm like, oh, and then like, I don't know, we'll just say I thought she heard me and she didn't hear me. And I'm like, hey, I told you, right? And it's like, I'll raise my voice because I'm like, I was expecting it to be done and it wasn't done. And I think at that moment when you catch yourself, you got to say, you know what, honey, I'm sorry. Like, don't wait. Apologize. And I think before, the Hispanic in me, the Latino, the Mexican in me, like your pride shows up and it's like, well, I'm not gonna apologize. Like, you don't like it, too bad. But when in reality, I did raise my voice, and it's this like, no, you got to catch yourself. So you know what? Forgive me you know what? It's not if I seem to raise my voice. If you think you seem to raise your voice, you raised your voice, right? Let's just be honest.
Yeah.
So I said, hey, I'm sorry for raising my voice and forgive me. And I think we do this exercise where I say, you know what? Please forgive me. She says, I forgive you. You owe me nothing, right? And you learn to do that, and you don't hold on to any resentment that builds in. Because I think when you do these things, that's the problem that many couples make, is that it's not the big scenarios in life or the big things. It's those little situations like that where you raise your voice or you disrespect them, and you don't apologize. And before you know it, it's kind of like that buildup and that gunk in the motor. Next thing you know, the motor locks up. Well, guess what? Next thing you know, the heart locks up because you have all this resentment and you don't even realize you have it.
That is so true. One point that I want to give you is when you're with a stranger, I can tell you you're, let's say, just to give you an example, you're dumb. You don't know what you're talking about. And I can walk away. Maybe 2 hours later, you forgot about it. But the thing that we don't realize sometimes is that we are married to this person. And now after 5, 10, 15, or 25 years, there's an accumulation of things.
Yes.
Now, so those little things that you think they're nothing, now it's been 10, 20 years of an accumulation of your disrespect, which now it becomes something that is actually very big, something that is hurtful, something that is not benefiting who you are. So so
You're right.
I
You know, you're exactly right. It's like this. It's like you're gaining weight,
exactly.
and one day you put on pants. You're like, how did that happen? Well, it's hey, the signs were there. You just chose to ignore it, and it's not from one day to the next. The pants didn't fit you. It was building up, and you just failed to ignore. Right? You feel the uncomfortableness, and you sense that your wife's short with you, or you sense your husband's short with you, or maybe the love making's not there like it used to be. Well, there's a reason, but you just choose to ignore it.
Yeah, I love that. I love what you said. Is the same thing. Is there? It's just one candy. It's just one burger. It's just one this. It's just one that. Right? It's just one soda. Then later on, you're like, wait, how did I get here? It was that one little thing you kept on doing. That is so true. I love that though. I love the way you're saying it. The small things actually matter, and I truly believe that. And to drive it all home, what do you think will be the third principle that you have applied in your life that or business that has made an impactful change for you?
Well, I think men need to hear this. I think if there was success principle is really just to forgive yourself along the way.
Mm,
I think it's a principle of just self love and self care. And I think so many times we beat up ourselves because we're not kind to ourselves. And I think you just got to be kind to yourself and forgive yourself. I think we're taught, especially in the Mexican community, to be machismo and to be this and to be that. And we've heard it, right? Men don't cry. Don't be a pussy. Don't be a wuss. And I think you really have to forgive yourself, because I think that that's what brings down men so much, as they carry the shame, they carry the guilt. So one of my success principles is just really forgiving yourself. And you'd be amazed how many people harbor, besides the spouse scenario, against themselves, they harbor that unforgiveness,
mhm.
and they just don't truly forgive themselves. And the thing is that whenever you have unforgiveness, it blocks your creativity. It blocks you from receiving from God. So you don't get that wisdom, and you're not living your best life.
Mhm. That is so true. I think you, I think being able to not forgive yourself when you don't forgive yourself, I think you're stopping your progress. meaning
Yes.
you're staying stuck in one area of time. Like like it always happened. Like it's always gonna be there. Meaning like instead of you saying it happened yesterday, it's happening to you right now. The just the thought and the idea, I mean, we literally go through the emotion, right? Like when you're like, this damn guy was like doing this, and you're actually putting yourself through the same stress every time you think about it. So you're in the same mindset, in the same stage of emotion, that you relive that same scenario, that same time. So forgiving yourself is letting go of that stress that is
Yeah.
just pursuing you and actually making you relive something you don't need to. Right. So I love that. Sometimes you just
But
gotta
it,
say
it, it, it even goes
throw the
further
garbage.
than that. It keeps us from receiving the next level blessing because you
True.
feel that you're unworthy and you feel that you're undeserving of it. And I
Mm,
was just coaching somebody on that today. I was like, it's you don't see it. They're like, no. I'm like, what you're really saying is you don't deserve it.
mm,
And when you say that, just think about what you're deflecting away from you. Because let's think about it. If we'll just say right sales, because we're talking business, you're talking about sales. We'll just say that you have the wrong perspective of money and, oh, I don't deserve to be wealthy. I don't deserve to be rich. I don't deserve to be a millionaire. But what you're really saying is, right, since I'm in sales and I'm selling XYZ product, what you're really saying is I'm killing my own sales. So there's not no revenue, no commissions going to be coming in is what you're really saying, because that form of money is the sale turns into revenue or money for your house, for your household, for your business. So you're really deflecting that. So really what you're saying is I'm killing my own sales, and people don't see that because it's the same, it's one and the same thing.
mm. That's a very good way to see it.
Does that make
That is
sense?
so true. Yeah, that is true. That is so true. Um, so first of all, I want to tell you that the three principles you gave were pretty powerful, and I really liked it, and they were really kind of outflowing. There was kind of a segue to each one. So we've been past over 45 minutes. So I just want to make sure that we can put some of the time to let people know um, how they can get in contact with you, how can they reach out to you, how they're able to find you.
Yeah, well, easy. Just go to www.danielgomezglobal.com. That's danielgomezglobal.com. And then my book that I have out now that talks about a lot of the things that we talked about, the success principles, it's called You Were Born to Fly. It's on Amazon. You can get your copy right now. So go to Amazon and get your copy of You Were Born to Fly. And it really just talks about some of the things that we talked about here to really, where you're able to go back and reflect on the chapters and write down some of your answers. And I would love to connect with your audience. And when they go to our website, danielgomezglobal.com, they can send me a message there through our contacts, and I'll bless your audience with a complimentary 45-minute discovery session, my gift for me to them. And then last but not least, my brand name is Daniel Gomez Inspires. So you can find us on Twitter. You can find us on YouTube and Facebook and IG, and that's danielgomezinspires.com. I mean, Daniel
Perfect.
Gomez Inspires. Yes, sir.
Perfect. We'll put a couple of links below the video so people can reach out to you, and so they can go and get your book as well. So once again, Daniel, I really thank you for taking the time and for giving us such great information. It was a pleasure having you, and if you guys like the interview, please hit like, subscribe to the channel, and as well, if you're looking to grow yourself, look for his information and go get his book. We'll put the links in the bottom of the video so you guys can go and reach out to him or connect with him through with his products. So once again, Daniel, thank you again. We appreciate it. And man, we're looking forward to your growth, and hopefully we can have you again in a couple of years to really go with new principles and with your new success.
Well,
So
thank you,
we
Warren. It was an amazing time on your show, and thank you for having me, my friend. I appreciate it.